Welcome to the Week 7 Fantasy Football News. We have been on the run from the evil Darth Kamara, and so I will have to bring you this update from aboard the Millennium Falcon. Having 6 teams on bye this week really made a difference as we saw the lowest total score for all teams at 1,130. Many teams had 3 or even 4 starters on bye and so had to field backups in the hope that they could escape with a win. Couple of reminders here. There are only 2 teams on bye this week, the Ravens and the Raiders. Check those lineups and make moves accordingly. At the end of regulation, on the upcoming Monday night game, any teams that have not paid their league dues will have their players' bench and rosters locked until payment has been made. Please remit payment, either cash or Venmo, to Mike Frazier or myself. All right, plenty of matches to get to this week and a couple of new record holders, so let's dive right in. First up is what many are calling the upset of the century. Rebel Scum came into this week having won 6 in a row and looking to roll over a team Scott that has had their share of woes. With 2 starters and 3 bench players on bye and 2 starters on IR, Rebel Scum manager Eric knew it was going to be an uphill battle. Having his running back core score just 7.5 points was no help either. Kyler Murray had a decent showing, but it just was not enough. Team Scott was feeling so confident this week that they did not even bother starting a kicker and yet still managed to score the most points in week 7, as well as set the record for largest margin of victory at 73.5. Team Scott also managed to have the largest margin of improvement over last week, scoring an additional 53.6 points. Add in 5 players scoring over 20 points, and you have a recipe for an absolutely stunning defeat. Team Scott takes the victory here, 154.14 to Rebel Scum's 80.64. Next week, we'll find Team Scott visiting the generic football team, while Rebel Scum will host Stars and Stripes in a much-anticipated matchup of division leaders. Our second match featured Team Marty versus Washington Fantasy. Team Marty has been unable to find a win since week 1 and came into this match desperately needing a win to remain in the hunt for a playoff spot. With good performances from Damian Harris and Jalen Hurts, Team Marty saw their best chance here in week 7 against a Washington Fantasy team that was coming off a win last week, but otherwise appears to be mediocre at best. Washington Fantasy did actually start a defense this week, so props to them there. But other than a 30-point effort from Ron Rodgers, there were no bright spots for Corey in week 7. At the end of this one, Team Marty gets that elusive second win, 114.79 to 99.66. Next week, Team Marty will play host to Sandlot Turf Burns, while Washington Fantasy makes the trip to Any Given Sunday. Our third matchup, the generic football team versus Sandlot Turf Burns. The Sandlot Turf Burns have faced off against either the highest or second highest scoring team in 5 of the previous 6 weeks, and we're looking for a break this week as they took on Randy and the generic football team. Still missing 2 starters, Russell Wilson and Christian McCaffrey, the Turf Burns needed their bench to step up in order to fend off a generic football team that just cannot seem to get anything going. A 32.6-point effort from Jamar Chase led the way for the Turf Burns, and the assist goes to an excellent effort from the Tampa Bay defense. Despite a 15.4-point performance from kicker Graham Gano, the generic football team now has a solid lock on last place and is looking for any way they can improve. Go ahead and get those trade requests in before the Week 8 deadline. Note, there is no Week 8 deadline for trade requests in fantasy. The Sandlot Turf Burns pull out the win here, scoring 145.8 to the GFT's 120.46. The Turf Burns will face a hungry Team Marty in Week 8, while Randy and the GFT hope to get a home win against a stout Team Scott. Our fourth matchup, Any Given Sunday versus Team Deathrager. The closest game this week was brought to us by Team Deathrager and Any Given Sunday. Team Deathrager just cannot go wrong at the quarterback position. With Josh Allen on bye, they start Tom Brady, and he throws his 600th TD pass on the way to a 32.44-point performance. Just the opposite for Any Given Sunday, as he chooses to start Sam Darnold while Dak Prescott is on bye. Scoring only 2.44 points, I am sure we will hear more about this decision in a moment. A 33-point performance from Cooper Kupp was not enough to help as the Ragers win a close one, 116.24 to Any Given Sunday's 113.34. Week 8 has Any Given Sunday hosting Washington Fantasy, while Team Deathrager will make a trip to the Wu-Tang Dome to face the Cash. And now we present to you our weekly $5 contest. Our week 7 contest was highest scoring total bench with 72.96 total bench points. Mike Frazier, once again, wins our weekly contest. That makes it 2 in a row and 4 total for the Stars and Stripes owner. Next week's contest is highest scoring single bench player. I'm putting up a personal bounty of an additional $5 that will go to any winner this week that is not Mike Frazier. Moving on, I feel a disturbance in the force.
Hello, I am OP SUP Eric Noby, here to let you know who among you let the dark side in. Helen let anger cloud her judgment as she failed to roster a kicker, yet she became one with the Force, and the Force was with her as she still managed an absolute mauling of Rebel scum. Randy was tempted by the dark side and almost failed to roster a tight end, but was hit by a Jedi mind trick and made a last-minute roster move that unfortunately was not enough. The Force was not with Randy. Casey was overcome by fear, which led to anger, which led to hate, which led to suffering, as he made the decision to start Sam Darnold in the QB slot. Not just any other QB, but every other starting quarterback, apart from Zach Wilson and Justin Fields, would have gotten him the win. Heck, starting Patriots wide receiver Kendrick Bourne at quarterback would have been a better decision. The Force was not with Casey. I must go now, younglings. Remember, use the Force.
Next up, we have Mike's game of the week. It's Mike's crappy game of the week. Game of the week. It's Mike's crappy game of the week. Game of the week. It's Mike's crappy game of the week. What is it? It's really crappy. It's the game of the weekend. It's Mike's crappy game of the week. Week 7 had what appeared to be all the makings of a high-scoring affair, with the 5-1 Stars and Stripes averaging a league-high 143.02 points, taking on the 4-2 Wu-Tang Cash, who were averaging 126.25 per game. Alas, it was not to happen. In the crappy game of the year so far, Mike Frazier's Stars and Stripes got past Rob Carter's Wu-Tang Cash 107.54 to 76.94. Now, the 76.94 effort from Wu-Tang Cash being the lowest scoring effort of the season by any team so far. This game also is the lowest scoring matchup of the year so far, and the only game to have a combined score under 200 points, as the teams combined to score more than 85 points below their season averages. For the game itself, Mike had his QB and top wide receiver out on bye. His tight end and second best wide receiver second best running back were both hurt and unable to play. Rob had his quarterback, Patrick Mahomes, play, but he had the worst game of his career, getting only 7.74 points, well below his 28.9 point average. He also had his top 2 running backs out, one with injury and one on a bye week. Mike was able to pick up Tua, who put up 34.54 points, and had 4 other players who scored between 10 and 17.4 points. Rob's highest scoring player was Elijah Mitchell, who put up 17.2 points, with his defense posting the next highest score with 11 points. What an absolute stinker we had here. Mike will have to do better next week as he takes on Division II powerhouse Rebel Scum. Rob will look to bounce back in Week 8 against the dangerous Team Deathridger. That will do it for Week 7 of the Fantasy Football News. We hope you will continue joining us each and every week here as we bring you these weekly recaps. Remember to check those rosters for bye-week players and get those dues paid. As always, good luck to everybody but Mike Frazier this week. And remember, here at Fantasy Football News, I'm better than you, unless you're Helen.